All right. Go ahead and introduce yourself, who you are, what do you do?
My name is Kathy Iandoli. I'm a professor at NYU, proud NYU graduate, author, media coach, and documentarian.
Mm. And what kind of projects have you made regarding to mental health and self-care?
I have actually two in particular that I have worked on or have been working on. The first one is a journal called Get Your Mind Right, WRITE, which is actually a reflection of what was going on in my media coaching sessions with some of my artists and using music as kind of like this vessel for mental health betterment and all these other things. That released last year, I believe. Um, and I also have a book coming out on October 14th with Gucci Mane, which I was a co-author on called Episodes, Diary of a Recovering Madman. And that actually tackles Gucci's mental health journey over the last several years. But as an overall practice, I utilize elements of life coaching and other, I guess, vehicles for mental health wellness in my practices as a media coach as well to artists.
And mm, what is it like speaking about mental health and what is it, I guess the hip hop space?
Well, I think, you know, all around it's mental health, discussions on mental health can be seen sometimes as taboo. A lot of times artists really struggle with being vulnerable, and that can be for a number of reasons, right? It can be from their own pressure for artistry. It can be due to gender. A lot of times, those who identify as male really struggle with being able to express when they're feeling anxious or sad or things of that nature. And then also, there's subject of race. A lot of young Black artists who are not given as much access or opportunity to things involving mental health betterment often struggle with being able to say those things out loud. And, it in hip hop, especially, you're talking about a number of different factors as to why an artist may not be willing to speak on certain things involving their mental health. I mean, it does transcend genre, but in my line of work, this is where I've seen it the most.
And is that why it's so important to discuss, mental health, in the hip hop space? Because again, like you said, it's very taboo.
Absolutely. I think, it's one of those things where somebody has to say it first for everyone else. It has to be normalized, right? So somebody has to say, hey, I've been struggling, for someone else to say, oh, you too, right? And that often happens, but it's not done enough with enough frequency that it's become the norm to be so open. And the thing about what I've noticed when it comes to hip hop is a lot of times the discussions happen after the person has survived the storm, right? So you're looking at someone who may feel better about certain things, didn't exactly process it, right? It's different when and you don't want to trigger people into writing and making music in that moment, but I think the thing is if we had a little more music and artistry that centered around this. Now, I will say about about 2 decades ago or a decade and a half ago, there was an uptick in this, right? When artists like Kid Cudi and Drake, were kind of the chip off the 1.0 block of Kanye West, right? You started to see more of a discussion of feelings, but the problem is that got stigmatized way too quickly as like emo rap. Oh, this is them being emotional. And then what it does is it takes away the ability to really have your audience feel like they can relate when you put a negative spin on it and how the alternative was like super hard. I think about like the battle that had happened for album sales between Kanye West and 50 Cent, and then Kanye one, which we've argued in music history, sort of set the tone for the direction of hip hop thereafter. So we were going more into this, for lack of a better word, feelings based music making, as opposed to like having this rugged exterior and, you know, talking gangster stuff. I like whatever the case may be. But what we're doing in that conversation then is suggesting that you can't have a rugged exterior and be feeling upset inside, like as if it's got to be one or the other. And, you know, what we're seeing now is a lot of music in general that's coming from this need for therapy, right? One thing I've noticed a lot in speaking with artists as of late is they really have been saying, my music is my therapy. My music is my therapy. I put it into therapy. But therapy in general also helps, right? Doing these kinds of practices and really getting to lock in and talk to someone about this. You don't have to be left to your own devices in like a studio all the time. But I do think that we need more of a discussion of these things when the person is not in the eye of the storm and we haven't been watching, let's say, the person spiral on social media either, because I don't think either of those things are helpful to an outside person who's watching or listening, wondering when is their time to really take these matters into their own hands and help their own mental health.
Mhm. No, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And what was it like, co-writing for Gucci Mane's memoir?
Since this is his third work, and this is what you would, I guess, call a period memoir, which is like a period of time in a person's life, this one was pretty heavy in parts because it's really just Gucci processing so many things around him with this clarity that comes from him doing the work and also sobriety and all these other things where he was looking at situations so differently from when he might have like years back, right? So being a part of that, it was an honor, first of all. Um, but second of all, it and when people read the book, it'll make you really think about how we handle artists who are clearly struggling in the spotlight. Because I think the thing is, and this is even outside of Gucci, but because we're so social media driven nowadays, like we will watch someone spiral across every social media platform, but and we can tell that they're going through something, but we have to wait for them to say it out loud for us to sympathize or show any sort of emotion. If not, it's just reactionary and looking at posts and all these other things. So I think what Gucci is doing with his book is really showing people like, hey, there are a number of different ways you could be going through something. And there are a number of different ways we can just be a spectator to it. And it's not great. It's not great to do to the artist. It's not great for the industry. It's not great for the fans, but it's also not great for the person as a human being.
Hmm. And does that come with also being in the spotlight as well, just like dealing with fame and like combined with like mental health?
Well, I think, yeah, absolutely. Like people are watching you all day long. That's not, that's not normal, right? And to tell someone that in order to pursue their dream of artistry, which will make them financially comfortable, we hope, they have to sacrifice any right to privacy, any rights to self-care. If they're not feeling a tour date, they have to just push along, do what you got to do. And I think the big switch that gets flipped is what exactly is the do what you got to do? Is it self-medicating? Is it having outbursts on social media because you need a release? Is it partying? Is it retreating in between shows? That do what you have to do oftentimes does not include healthy practices. but it also comes from this strange fascination and this parasocial relationship that we have with artists in expecting so much from them because we're their fans. And none of it's healthy. None of it.
Mm. And I guess what type of impact do you want to make when, I guess the projects that you mentioned before?
Mhm. You know, I've been working in the music industry now almost 30 years. And um, I started in the music industry working with artists directly and then moving over to journalist. And journalism, as we became like a clickbait culture, I started to just realize that, it became less about the artist story and more about what story we can pull out of the artist to get headlines. And it just didn't feel good. Right. So that's when I moved over to book writing with the artist and media coaching with the artist and documentaries with the artist and working directly with the artist. Because what I realized was that we're not preparing artists to know how to be famous and what all of that comes with. So one thing that I hope with any of the projects I do, and even just interacting with artists, is that we're able to start to see that artists are human beings. They're not just made to be put on stages and in studios for our consumption. And I think, you know, the artists being able to be open about what their struggles are in turn will help the fan base, right? Because it inspires them. I work with artists who have worked with artists that I've worked with, right? Like they are fans of these artists. And with some of the artists, they're like, hey, I'm like the way they talk about this stuff in their music just really inspired me to start doing it and things of that nature, right? So you can see the impact happening, right? Um, I just want to make sure that in the work that I do, that I'm preparing the artist to be public facing and to handle the pressures of fame. And however that may be, whether it's helping them tell their story in book form, whether it's creating this journal, whether it's sitting in 2 hour sessions with them on how to answer certain questions about their life. Because even talking about things can be triggering. And again, every artist has the same human experience we do. They just happen to be more famous. So that's really my goal, at least in my line of work.
And what does, I guess, Self-Care Awareness Month mean to you, and how do you take care of yourself?
Huh. Well, it's difficult at times for me personally to take care of myself because so much of my work is hearing other people's stories. And sometimes you just forget what your story is in the mix of all of that. So I've been actually working harder to be more proactive in taking care of myself, whether it's having a therapy session, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's meditating and doing breath work, whether it's journaling, um, and also just like, infrared like sauna therapies and things like that. And also some of my little woo-woo practices like chakra clearing and things of that nature, right? So, I tend to have a lot of different modalities for myself. Um, and making it a priority to at least wedge one into a busy day. That's that's a goal that do I succeed? Not all the time, but I have learned to start to prioritize that. And as someone who also deals with anxiety, but also is dealing with grief, I lost both of my parents. Knowing when to take a beat, right, and knowing when like you can't be helpful to anyone else if you're not helping yourself first. So that's a journey for me, and learning to practice what I preach to my artists, like, hey, sit down, take a beat, do this, learning to apply those things to myself. But as a whole, I think self-care is just really self-regulation,
Hmm.
you know um and yeah, sometimes that can be wearing fuzzy slippers and binge watching a show, but it's really learning how to get yourself out of the fight or flight that we often deal with in just everyday life, and especially with what's going on in the world, right? So whatever that may be, whatever those practices may be, that's what I would consider to be the most high level awareness one can have in their own self betterment.
Mhm. I agree. And I don't know if this will make your day, but like you're also kind of an inspiration for me because I'm also very interested in like music journalism. So seeing what you're doing is pretty cool and top notch.
Oh wow, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that.
Yeah. And I guess and especially since September also represents, Suicide Awareness Month, I guess what does that mean to you? And like I guess how can that go into that type of awareness go into the hip hop space?
Um, so suicide awareness is something that is very personal to me because one of my clients, a very, very young artist, unalived himself um, during the time period that I had been working with him. And it really affected me because I felt that I saw the signs, I flagged the signs. Um, but I don't know the details of were were they overlooked those signs by other people. I don't know what happened, right? But once I lost that artist, I put a greater onus on the life coaching element of my media coaching practice. It was for him specifically, for his memory, because I just remember how terrible it felt to lose him, right? Especially he was so young. So for me, it means a lot to let people know, especially young people, because your generation uh, is going through a lot more in a different way than from generations past. And while there's a lot of stuff that's available, it's still not an easy road. So yeah, that actually, suicide prevention is completely important to me because, I've seen what the other side looks like.
And mm, I guess is there any type of advice you like to give out to, I guess, any artist or anyone in general?
Um, it's I would love to just say, hey, when you're going through something, just say it. That's easier said than done. Um, I think admission that you're going through something, and it could be something as, well, I don't even want to say small, but it could be something as step one as stress. Say it out loud. Like say the fear out loud, say the bully out loud. Once you say it out loud, then you can put the processes and the pieces together on how to address it. But if you always keep it in the tuck, then it makes it that much harder to heal from it. So say it out loud as your step one. The the go get help, all of these things, I think these are things that everyone would say, right? Go get help, go seek out, talk to your friends. It's not always that easy. I'm just going to say step one, say it out loud. And I think from there you can develop your own action plan that feels comfortable and right for you.
And is there anything else you'd like to add for the interview?
I just, I would like to tell anyone who's listening to this, whether you're my student or otherwise, we're not in a great place in the world right now, but there's a lot to be hopeful for in your own lives and careers and all of that stuff. And just take care of yourselves. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much again, Kathy, for this.
No, no problem. Thanks for having me.